KCAAradio.com.
KCAA.
Folks, you know that there are plenty of obstacles out here. There are plenty of things and people who would like to slow you down, and you may get angry at it, or you may get enthused with the opportunity to demonstrate your strength based on their resistance. The idea is to show up. The idea is to understand that your power is only able to be demonstrated if there's some resistance, if there's something trying to hold you back. And believe me, God put that together so well for us. You've got good and evil, you've got left and right, you've got up and down, you've got day and night. And these opposites work so well together, they give us the perpetual motion of life. And so don't be disappointed about the bad times, because they announce the coming good times. And be weary and be careful in the good times, because that may be the time you need to prepare for the bad times. It's a circle, but it's a circle of life. And that's what we want to depend on, is our contribution in the circle of life. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. We're here on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. I know I have my glasses here somewhere. There they are. My wife just told me. I heard her in my head. They're on your head. Empire Talks Back is brought to you by the Improve Association, promoting business and community partnerships and community news via WSSnews.com. All we can do is improve if we choose to. Now, this resource was supported in whole or in part by funding provided by the state of California's community, administered by the California State Library via California Black Media as part of the Stop the Hate program. The program is supported in partnership with California Department of Social Services and the California Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs. As part of the Stop the Hate program, we report a hate incident or hate crime and get support. Call Stop the Hate, 8338 No Hate. That's 8338 No Hate. You know, we've been confronting hate for centuries. Here in our country of the United States of America, we have been enduring and confronting hate for centuries. Confronting hate generated by the same white men and institutions that our forefathers and friends have fought to defend and glorify, the American way. We have built the physical infrastructure of our country, and we have also confronted the immorality of racism with a cross-generational physical and spiritual commitment to improve our circumstances. Walk together, children. Don't you get weary. We've got a long way to go, but we will get there. And we'll get there because of people like our first guest, Dr. Brian Levin. Now, I could spend the whole hour telling you who Dr. Brian Levin is, and by that time you would not be able to feel the impact of what he's got to say and all of what he has done, and what he advises you and I to do in this world that is, kind of filled with hate and love. And which way do we lean, and what is it that we need to be aware of as we attempt to improve our circumstances? Dr. Levin is considered an expert on hate and vice versa throughout the world. He is a member of the United States Supreme Court. That should tell you how deep his law knowledge is. And he is the creator, founder of the group here in the Inland Empire at the University of California, San Bernardino. That's not university, but California State University here in San Bernardino. And hate, and this conversation about hate has to be generated by his love for people. Dr. Levin, I'm not complete in that introduction, and people will learn much more about you as we get an opportunity to talk. How are you this morning, and thank you for joining us. Good morning, Dr. Levin.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I was about to get the first name in you and say, Brian, where are you? What's So, Brian, Dr. Levin, Professor Levin, Attorney Levin.
And Whitehead, I'm of that generation, so I'm like, wow. He listens to the same music I listen to, and his glasses are on his head, too.
That's the deal. That's the deal. We are wise enough through our years to understand that people don't always see things the same way we see them. And not only is that the truth, we also realize that we've got to sit in the same bus or ride in the same lane, live in the same neighborhood with people who don't understand us, who don't like us, and in some cases really want to do something bad to us. And in some cases, we don't even know that. Some cases, they are hidden by the institutions that we live and abide by. But you are the expert, and I'm blessed and tremendously proud to have you on our program, and I want to hurry up and let our audience know why I'm so proud. Dr. Levin, as we face hate, as we face the constant change of life that's based on greed and I want yours and you should not have any of mine, how do we recognize, and how important is it for us to recognize these forces that divide in an attempt to conquer not just people, but the things that people need and depend on? Can we say I love you and at the same time deny you food? Can we say I love you and at the same time deny you the right to think and contribute to the society that we all live in? What is going on? You are not just an analyzer, you are a liver. What kind of advice? Do you have kids?
Oh my gosh, yes, and they've asked me not to identify them.
No, not to identify them specifically.
Two wonderful boys.
You got grandchildren? Do you
just had our first one.
Okay, so you are about to find the real joys of life, and at the same time the real weight that goes along with why you want this world to be a better place. Have you thought about the things that you want to tell your grandchildren to be alert about, to be a member of, to help fight and fit the battle for?
Well, for the grandchildren, I think, by the time they're out and about, I'll be carried someplace.
That's why you're going to talk to them now.
The last thing I want to be seen as is having the diversity that shaped my heart over my life reflect my final time. So I think they'll see that. But it's so interesting. Reverend C.T. Vivian was the first person whose group I represented. He led the Southern Christian Leadership Conference after Dr. King, and then founded. He's all right. Let me just step back a second. In the Jewish faith, there's a belief that there are 36 people, and they have a regular heart. In other words, they can talk to you. They're not celebrities. Reverend Vivian was one of those people who changed the world. And I've had long conversations with him. And something that you were saying about the institution, the highest calling of Black America is the highest calling of America. And that is recognizing the individual dignity of all people. That's what Dr. King preached. That's what even Cornel West, and gosh, people have differences and all that. But, we don't want to get into politics. Okay? But what I'm saying to you is what has happened with the civil rights movement is it It has challenged the original sin of slavery and racism and said if we are to live up to our ideals of civil liberties, we have to eradicate root and branch that original sin. But the data that you talked about shows that while we've improved from when the Kerner Commission was together in 1968, we have improved. We had the first African-American president. But in so many measures with respect to discrimination, we have fallen behind, and that includes anti-black hate crime, which is falling for many years.
We recently have in California established the Stop the Hate campaign. You're a member, I think, maybe even a founding member of the Stop the Hate Commission, with the idea that, let's go back, we don't want to talk politics, but we can talk about a few politicians and statements they've made. Our new president, Mr. Trump, who I think is one of the smartest, and I'll use the word that they've used in the past, slickest, greatest con men, who also has the potential of being possibly the greatest president we've ever had if we could turn him a little to the left and squeeze him in through a couple of keyholes. But during the pandemic, in his first reign, he accused the Asian American, the Chinese people of starting a pandemic. Naturally, because of racism, and I say naturally and naturally, unnaturally, but there it is, Asians were attacked around the world as a result of that statement. And in the United States, they gained a lot of publicity with as a result of that attack. In California, that act created a $200 million project to stop the hate based on reporting, not just people being dragged behind cars and hung in public, but hate incidents, demonstrations of hate, as much as little as making you uncomfortable and as much as attacking people on the street. Black people still, in the midst of the number one, this big movement, money being put out, telling Asians and the rest of the population to report hate, to make a phone call. Let's establish some type of record as to what's going on. We find that all of that push didn't really change the ranking of who is hated most, who is set, well, I'll just leave it there, who is hated most. African Americans, without reporting at the high level, still represent a third of the hate crimes and hate incidents in the state of California. I'm not suggesting that anyone else should be targeted higher, but I'm wondering, what do we need to do to make the report and at the same time have some level of hope that the report doesn't, that as it goes up, something will be done. But as I've talked to my African-American friends, my brothers, my sisters, my aunts, my uncles, and I've asked them, I said, hey, have you ever reported a hate crime? And 8 out of 10 say, nah. And I said, well, why? Have you never been exposed? And he said, come on, Wallace, you know better. I've been exposed. But I haven't talked about it to anyone except maybe at a party, maybe at a coffee klatch, or maybe to my friends. But it doesn't do any good for us to complain. And I'll leave it at that, Brian. What good does it do to complain, and how can we prove that it does some good? Has our Attorney General been able to secure, put people in jail? What is the goal of the reporting of the hate crime? What do we expect to have really come out of that? And how secure and comfortable should people feel knowing that they can report a hate crime? And what else is it that we really should be doing to cross cultural borders to allow and encourage people to not only endure the existence of some other culture, but actually be excited about the prospects of what that culture can do to upgrade and improve their life.
What a great statement. You know, the first thing I think is important is that there has always been a significant historical and moral narrative of the African American experience in America, which challenged the cornerstone of what equality should be, and aspirational. And behind that has not only been narratives, and I'm talking about like culturally, particularly over the last half century. Remember, yes, there's bad news. African Americans continue to be the most targeted group for hate crime in California and the United States. But it did come after a time when we saw from 96 to 2019 year-over-year decreases in the proportion of African Americans as overall hate crime victims. What else did we see? We saw the election of the first African American president. We saw a shifting with respect to many of the surveys and polls relating to African Americans that were in the positive direction. And we've also seen an increase in education. Remember, pre-Roots, I met Alex Haley. That book changed American culture. African American leaders changed American culture across things from the sciences to widely followed things. So what I'm saying to you is, we're in an era where, at least in the abstract, there is a recognition of the vileness of racial bigotry. There's not a follow-through, but we've reached that tipping point.
We don't want to talk...
And that's where the hardest battles are.
Now, we don't want to talk politics, but battling that, one way I think is the cultural exchange, the spreading of love, the idea that it's kind of hard to hate people that you sit down and eat dinner with. It's kind of hard to hate people that you sit down and share good common experiences with. And so those things work. But at the same time, now we are in a circumstance where we have the internet. We have everybody with a microphone and a platform to either spew out love or to spew out hate. And there's got to be something that we can do to attract people more to one than to the other. Or, if I can't, how big of a team do I need to create before I can feel comfortable moving forward with a concept of love and sharing and doing something that's going to benefit my immediate group and help the world? Should I wait until I've got 500 people, 1,000 people? How many people do you think it takes, Brian, to actually make a movement or create a movement that can improve our society?
There's a movement, and one of the things that I think folks are doing is, and it is a tough time. One of the things Reverend Vivian told me in the just the honored times that I got to meet him, he told me back in the mid-'90s that your generation, meaning mine, was going to have a more difficult time. And I said to him, Reverend Vivian, you were almost killed. And he said the difference is the lines were clear. The moral lines were clear, and laying down your life for morality, as painful as it could be, there was a strict contrast. He said, you're going to go into a world where things will be fuzzied, where they'll have and that's what we've seen with the mainstreaming of aggression, bigotry, targeted violence, and the racism under it. Listen to what Tucker Carlson said about Vice President Harris's background. Forgetting about politics. We're not talking, he mocked her background. We're at an era now where there's divisiveness and aggressiveness out there. And by the way, it comes on different sides of the political spectrum as well. But what I think is so important is that there is still the ability to grassroots organize using the internet. But I think there has to be some kind of adherence to the non-acceptance of bigotry across the board. One of the things that Reverend Vivian said to me was that you can't have a movement with anti-Semitism. He said that, that's another original sin. And he was so interfaith, yet also realized that there were people who would come under a cloak of progressiveness but still be tarnished by bigotry. And I think that, so we're seeing that on different sides of the political spectrum. Real briefly, not talking about politics, but when we're talking about a conservative lean, and here in California, we're much more of a purple state, and I think that the conservative people of goodwill need to be represented, or at least be able to be heard when speaking as people of goodwill. And that's what we all can agree on, and that is both the aspiration of many of our faiths, the aspiration of our federal and state laws relate to the equal and fair treatment of people, as well as the recognition of the dignity of all persons that reside and visit our state. That's where it starts with. And that's why I'm so appreciative of the show that you do. And that's one of the things, just also, if I could just really talk about, we go to the African-American community and organizing. The way that both helping others locally and being part of even a faith community spreads things. So when I came in for a funeral of Alvin Sykes, who had less than an 8th grade education, yet helped with the progression of the law when a black jazz musician was murdered as a federal hate crime in Kansas, and he helped steal that through. When he passed away as a Buddhist, the black church held his funeral. And from his funeral, we went to a presser where we talked about a Kansas City police captain who was raping and brutalizing African-American women, and nothing was being done. And just recently, his trial was to start, and he killed himself. And what I'm saying to you, it's a terrible thing if someone would kill themselves. But the bar of justice, having that different levels where prosecutors came in with local community people, where people who were being honored for progressing things with very limited technical skill sets from a law school. He learned his law, Alvin Sykes, God bless his soul, in the Kansas City Library, and saved lives even after he passed. From his funeral, people went to protest for justice for these brutalized women who never had their story told. And that arc of the moral universe, again, the fact that he killed himself is a terrible thing. But justice was rolling like the righteous waters that are so frequently discussed in African-American churches.
Brian, when we were growing up, there was honor among competitors. There was honor in the competition. There was no pride taken in beating someone who wasn't of the same status or comp level as you were. I remember as kids we played basketball, and we traveled from one neighborhood to the other with the idea that we're going to play ball, and the winners may take the nets, but we're going to shake hands after the game. Now sometimes the people who were on the sidelines didn't want to shake hands, and we had to leave early, things of that sort. But I'm seeing now the idea coming up from some of our sports people that I don't want to see these guys shaking hands and hugging. There's just too much going on between them. I want them to hate each other and play ball and hurt. And that slides over into real life. When we don't accept our competitor as a human being, if we don't accept our competitor as the one who actually brought the best in us out, we are left really dividing our own personal self and creating a monster within ourselves simply because we're trying to defend where we stand without understanding or without actualizing that where I stand is really helped. The definition of where I stand is probably helped more by where you stand than where I stand. The differences are the things that make us work well. Coming together is not easy, but it's so worth it when we actually do it. I don't know if I'm making myself real clear, but I want to say that the first person to ignore his opportunity to get even, there will be no peace until someone ignores their opportunity to get even. Does that make sense to you?
There is always an opportunity for peace. This has been a central message of the African American narrative in the United States. African Americans have asked nothing but that we live up to the promise of our aspirations. And what I do in my little garden is look at the data that shows we have so much further to go. But we've also hit a point where I think African Americans must know that many of us adhere to the doctrine that you can't be a good person of faith, that you can't be a good American if you don't pursue the eradication of racial bigotry, root and branch. And one of the things, they're not going to like it. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself, not on the commission or anyone else. But both the head of the Civil Rights Department and myself had an African-American judge as their mentor. In my case, the first one in decades federally, and the first at the appellate and the Court of Appeals in the Third Circuit, in his case in Alabama. And there is a specialness to the blueprint that we have that we are not carrying out. And what we're seeing is the rollback of DEI, by the way, with its flaws. Of course it's going to have flaws. It's a human institution. But the message of diversity, equity, and inclusion has got to include got to include Jews, got to include gay folks, whatever. What I'm saying to you is the message where peace is always an option and where the law reflects dignity of all residents and a statement against aggression and violence. I think that's where it starts. You can do all the research you want. You look at prejudice. There's a depth to it and a direction. And the more you can ameliorate it and understand that we as human folks, we have an emotional response, we have an informational input and a behavioral outcome, that we can recognize it and try to overcome those impulses. But we have to acknowledge that that's one of the flawed parts of the human existence, that we respond to emotion and impulse. Also a sense of tribalism. But there is something more aspirational. And that's where, in my little garden, doing the research on data, which shows whether it's maternal health, whether it's hate crime victims, whether it's incarceration, whether it's life expectancy. As a nation, we must do better.
Well, but those classifications you just announced, the statistics there would say that the African American community is in a state of emergency, starting at the very beginning, like you did with birth rate. How long do the babies live? How well do black mothers do on their way to birth, their prenatal? And what happens to the child when he's born? What happens at the preschool level? What happens at the nourishment level prior to preschool? What happens in school? How come so many African American kids are referred to the police and institutional systems at an early age and populate the juvenile halls and ultimately the jails and prisons? How come the unemployment statistics demonstrate that African Americans are the least hired, first fired? and on with this, like you say, all the way up to the statistic of death, who dies early, who has. So we can continue to ignore, or we can pay attention to. And when we pay attention to, come up with solutions like affirmative action, we find that offends. The truth offends. The truth of yesterday offends the people of today to the extent that, they're saying that they're being terrorized by the truth, that there was slavery, and that slavery was not a training tool to help African Americans become more employable and more creative as a result of the pressures of slavery.
Bigots are afraid of facts, and that's why all the ones that you recounted, along with numerous others. Hey, here's a fact for you.
But Brian,
yes, sir. Just no black appellate judges were appointed from in the first Trump administration.
I would like, if there was a way research-wise, to find out what happened to all of those black people in the 30s and 40s who left the South because they were light-skinned enough to pass for white. And that was a large number. And I know that in my mother's family, we have at least two who were able to successfully move from the world of black folk into the world of white people. We weren't mad. When I say that, they did not stop speaking and stop coming to the family reunion, of which, by the way, the African American family reunion is like a worldwide United Nations gathering in many cases. I think that we as African Americans are uniquely positioned to accept skin color from blue to purple, from white to whatever, because it represents some level of family. So I know it can happen. What we can do to make it happen, or is that a goal, becomes the real question. Greed, the desire, people of the same family, the same bloodline will argue about who mama loves the most. They'll argue about who should get the last biscuit or the first biscuit. So we know human nature is very interesting in that arguments are going to take place, and the more things that we allow to come between us, the more likely we're going to argue and potentially fight and maybe even kill each other. Cain and Abel. How do we get around those things? And that goes back to my question, Brian, about how large a team do we think we need to have in order to go forward or to create some type of coalition to help change what we feel to be the issues of the world a little better. And I say that, with as a leading question because, I don't know, I grew up enough to know that it helps to like who likes you. It doesn't help to chase. You're not going to get rich just because you voted for a rich man. And there, I think a lot of people who identified with rich people as they vote, thinking that somehow that rich is going to rub off on them. How can we spread the love more effectively? Brian, you've been knee-deep in exploring and understanding the principles and effects of hate. Has it led you towards some type of solution in terms of how we should be getting along, or do we have to continue to depend on just the legal system and the potential moral change of people around us, or is there some little tool that we can use, kind of twist it and make it go quicker?
I think a couple of things. One, embrace your leaders where they are. When I mean leaders, I mean the Khadijah Hardaways, sending my love to Khadijah in Kansas, who was part of a multifaceted coalition that found that scoundrel who's brutalizing black women. And then, Other folks got involved. So take the multi-layered approach. Find your allies where they are. And it doesn't matter race or geography. Relationships matter. And keeping the coalition together, not tolerating anti-immigrant stuff or anti-gay stuff or anti-Jewish. I've heard people, and by the way, this is not a political thing. There are folks who have different party affiliations who I think have not advanced the basic things that we all can agree on, and that is we've got to tone down aggression. We have to treat people with dignity, not use difference as something to fan the flames of suspicion. And by the way, if you go through like some of the speeches, just bear with me 1 second. A Republican, George W. Bush, some data. George W. Bush, 6 days after 9/11, when we spoke of tolerance, Islamist peace after 9/11, hate crimes dropped the next day, never to rise above where they had previously been. So words matter irrespective of politics. And I think like that's where, find where you can find the commonality. And I think there are conservative folks of goodwill who can be part of this. Because if you go by principles, the dignity of all people, the importance of free expression, and also the civility within discourse, that'll get you somewhere. And everyone else is trying the fire alarm, so that's kind of the route I'd like to go. But one of the things I'd like this commission to do, and this is just my personal opinion, is to highlight some of the scholars we've seen that we've had on racism who speak during our commission meetings and events. I'd like to make that more accessible to the public, and I'd love for the public to tune in when we have commission meetings, and we'll try and make them, I think, more public. But I think there's a multi-layered approach because prejudice involves both depth and direction. And if we can prune that down so it's ineffective to catapult into the mainstream, because that really establishes, in other words, just like Reverend Vivian said, or my judicial mentor talked about, the dignity of all people and a fair playing field. And if America can't commit to that, we're done.
Well,
so it's that. But what I'm saying, for white Americans and others, and it's important for us as allies to recognize how antithetical racial bigotry is in our nation, and whether it's expressed in a traditional hate crime, or it's the murder of a homeless person who's black, or a transgender person who's African American. We must speak out. We can't accept this. And that's why the one thing about Dr. King and others, and Benny Thompson, God bless them, over in Congress, were people who worked across lines to concentrate on those commonalities of decency. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. And the African American community has blessed me, has sculpted my heart at every juncture in my life where there has been someone who was part of a movement, and as Dr. Vivian said, I'll close with this, and this is what I say to you and the young people, right? Because for us, Diana Ross is the Beyonce. But anyway, but what Reverend Vivian would say, and he said this to me when I was at his home, he said, "We've been waiting for you." That's the message. If you believe in decency, we've been waiting for you, irrespective of background or faith or party.
Brian, the opportunity to speak with you has been something I've looked forward to for a long time, and having the opportunity to have you on the show is not satisfying at all. It's inspiring, and I'm not going to be happy with this one-timer at all. Some point in the future, I'd like for you to join us again, and we'll talk about that. But Brian, I think there's hope. We've got people, like my next guest, who are working with the children the children, the younger ones, and at my age, everybody kind of fits into that. Eric, I don't need you laughing, my engineer. How we are able to use these differences as an attraction to make people come together is what we're going to get a chance to talk to Miss Nicole Williams about, and we'll do that right after this break. Brian, I thank you so much. We'll let you go for a short time, and I'm not throwing the leash away. I'm just extending the length, and I'm going to tug on it very soon to see if I can get you back. My friend, thank you so much.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
Dr. Brian Levin, never enough. His perspective, his research, his work, his attitude is inspiring. And like I said, I can't be satisfied. That would say, well, I'm through with him. Don't need to worry about that anymore. And man, no way. To have the opportunity to speak with him again is something that we will all look forward to. But the things that he said, the thing that he says about our future, coming together, making the differences become bridges as opposed to fences is very important. And we have with us now a guest, Miss Nicole. Miss Nicole, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well.
Nicole Williams Artry.
Correct.
Very good. And you're with an organization. You tell us about your organization, and I'll cut you off when I think we're ready to start talking about some of the great things that you are actually doing and get into more of the philosophy of why you're doing it.
Well, thank you for having me. I work for an organization called the California Health Collaborative, and as you mentioned earlier, when the Stop the Hate funding became available, there was an opportunity for us to pursue funding, and we pursued it with the intent to work with the African American community, and from that we birthed a program called the Ubuntu Project, and that's who I serve as the program coordinator right now. And we've been doing that for a year and a half now, and it's been an amazing journey. The California Health Collaborative has been around for many years, but this is the first time that the state has identified and allocated funding that address hate. And so we wanted to make sure that we wanted to be a part of this innovative funding structure to be able to help the people in my community where I live, which is in the high desert, California.
So are you addressing hate by showing people how to hate?
Absolutely not.
So you're addressing the same solution probably that you've been operating on. Probably were a little excited by the fact that you saw some money to help you do what you pretty much have already been doing or wanting to do.
Exactly. We wanted to expand the opportunity and amplify the reach and use the funding in the proper way. What kind of plagued me is, like you said it earlier, is that hate isn't new, and as an African American community, we've experienced it for so long, but no one has ever thought to identify and work on our behalf. So we thought, well, we might as well jump on this opportunity and really amplify and give people the opportunity to show them how to report and build some resilience tools and strategies to be able to operate within our community. We're calling in and we're calling out racism on a granular level and making sure that it shouldn't be tolerated.
Yeah, and we're not depending on the telephone call to be the issue that actually stops the hate. That is one of the items on the menu. Mm-hmm. If you are experiencing hate and help define what those things are, we make a phone call, and we understand that that's a referral line. It's not necessarily going to take you directly to the Attorney General, and he's not going to hop in the car and send the helicopters and stuff out to remedy your circumstance. So as we tell people that there is a Stop the Hate program via the phone call, we also have to prop that up with a program designed to, as I say, spread the love as we alert people to the reason to stop the hate. What are you doing specifically in your project that you think will help change the minds of young people as they grow up regarding each other's potential and regarding the relationships that they can have with people regardless of their gender, regardless of their race and ethnicity, regardless of their goals? Respect. How do we do that?
So first, what we're doing is we're making our program, our focus on resilience. We're making our focus on healing and empowerment. We're making our focus on calling out what has been normalized, kind of almost like waking up the conversation. Like you said, we do not often see them being reported because they're like, oh, what for? Because it's important. If we do not report it, we won't be able to get the accurate data. They won't be able to be able to officially and see on paper what it looks like in different communities, and maybe be able to aggregate that data. Well, like even if you look at the data, like you'll see data in Los Angeles, you don't see it in any high desert, you don't see the Inland Empire. Mm-hmm. We have to be able to talk about that and be able to focus on programs and fund the programs that are needed in those areas that we will be able to do healing, empowerment, and education. But if they don't see it, if they don't see it as a problem, they won't send the funding to help.
Right, and we've been in that circumstance where we've been dealing with hate without any funding or help to support that. Now we have that funding, and that funding is saying report, but it is not requiring us so much to deal with the potential of stopping hate, to deal with a way of spreading the love. However, without that being put in as part of your deliverable, you're doing things among these young folks that, if time allows, in the next 5 years, the things that you're doing with these kids now will have changed their approach and understanding of life. The statistics may still be bad, but you will have captured a group of kids, young folk, who now will be walking with a different flag and a different attitude based on some of the things that you're doing. Tell us what you're doing with some of these young folk.
So right now, our latest program that we're doing is we're going to do a creative block art showcase. And we're inviting young people, 18 and under, to be able to submit their art, whether in all expressions. It could be painting, singing, spoken word, any kind of dramatic arts, to be able to share.
Deliver their soul to you in some type of artistic manner that allows you to say, wow, there's something valuable and important in who you are and what you plan to do. And not only discuss that with that person who created the art, but have others who are looking at the art discuss it, and just that discussion in itself starts to melt some of the borders, starts to melt some of the fences that we have created amongst ourselves, or allowed to be created because of information, false information, misleading information that we've been able to pick up. Is that correct?
That is. It's also an opportunity for us to also come together and have some intergenerational conversations.
That's it.
Because if we don't, like, there's so much wisdom, there's so much nuggets of influence that the older community we can pour in. And I think we've been divided for so long because maybe we've been jaded because of all the hate and harm we've experienced.
How would we not be?
Yeah, how will we not be?
Yes.
But there's hope, because these young people, they have youth on their side. They have a fire.
Someone in the universe, as I said, how could you not be jaded? Said, oh, what are you talking about? I'm not racist. I'm not this. I'm not. And I feel it. Some of those are black people. Some of those are Asian. And let me just quickly say, when you watch a game show, something simple, or when you watch an athletic competition, if there's somebody that looks like you, do you cheer more for them than you do the other person simply because they look like you? Wow. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question out there, but I had to say it because somebody out there feels that they are pure and untouched by the concept of preference and even racism. If I don't want you to win based on your color, that starts to stop you from accomplishment based on your color, and that's racism. We have to be careful, folks, to not give what we don't want to have, and that's really important. You have an event coming, and tell us about that event and how we can participate and encourage these young people that you're involved with.
I love that you asked me that question. So we're calling all youth of the high desert. We're seeking youth, music artists, painting artists, drawing artists, instrument playing artists, fashion artists, all artists of all forms. It's going to happen on February the 8th.
February 8th.
We do have an opportunity. You can find us on our Ubuntu Project CHC Instagram. You can find us on Ubuntu Project CHC Facebook. And we also have a QR code to share for those that are interested in submitting their art. We also need some vendors. We need vendors to come and support what the young people are doing. We need those who want to just give of their physical assistance if they want to be ushers. We really want to support them and let them know that we're on their side and that when they're sharing their hurt through their art, we want to be able to support them and amplify what they're doing.
Well, you know, most of us, we can say that any artist is sharing their hurt when they do something, or we can say they're sharing their joy. We can say they're bearing their soul. But the fact is they are involving their senses to make an expression.
Sure.
And if we overjudge it, some people won't participate because I don't want to show my pain. And you guys don't deserve to see my joy. And this, that, and the other. But artwork and participating and parents and everybody listening, they may not be able to get to the QR code. They may not be able to get to the website. But old school says they will call you.
All right.
Okay, can we give them a phone number just to let people know that if you have heard what we're doing, what Nicole is doing in terms of having this program for young people to demonstrate the cultural bridges that they have and the artwork that we all would love to see and support, give Nicole a call.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's your nephew, maybe it's your son, maybe it's your daughter, maybe it's you. Because cross-generational is important, and I'm not going to make the judgment as who's qualified and who's not. My friend Nicole will do that, so let's put the blame on her. Give them the number.
760-229-6175.
Say it again.
760-229-6175.
One more time.
760-229-6175.
And we'll send you that number again next week in a couple of weeks as we go all the way up to your show. And we do want people to participate, and we want to support and participate. And let's see if we can't come up with some surprises so that it'll make another level of attraction for people to participate.
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
Awesome.
and see what we can do to hook you up with some vendors that can also help participate. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, the quickest hour on radio. Sorry that we were not able to get God to give us an extra 15 minutes within the hour, but we are happy with what we've done. We hope we've inspired you. We hope we have given you a reason to understand that no matter what's going on in your life, no matter where you are listening, there's something you can do to influence and improve your circumstance. God bless you. This is Empire Talks Back. See you next week under two circumstances. One, if the good Lord is willing. Two, if the creek don't rise. God bless you.
NBC News on KCAA